It was a dark and stormy night. Rain lashed against the window and thunder cracked in the distance. Inside a small cottage, a man sat by the fire reading a book. Suddenly, the door burst open and a drenched woman stumbled in. "Please, sir," she gasped, "can you help me? My horse has run away, and I'm soaked to the bone. Would you mind if I shared your fire for a while?" The man looked up from his book, startled. He quickly ushered her towards the fire and offered her a blanket. As she dried herself by the fire, the man went back to his book. The woman sat quietly for a while. Then, unable to contain her curiosity any longer, she asked, "So, what are you reading?" The man looked up and said, "The Adventures of Sir Reginald the Brave, a tale of daring-do and daring-do." The woman sighed. "Oh, that sounds exciting. Perhaps you could read me a story about valiant knights and fearsome dragons." The man frowned, clearly annoyed at being interrupted. "I was in the middle of something," he grumbled, "but fine. Once upon a time, there was a young knight named Reginald. He lived in a castle with his father, the king. One day, Reginald set out to slay a dragon that had been terrorizing the kingdom." The woman's eyes lit up. "Oh, go on." Reginald rode through the forest on his trusty steed, his armor clanking with every step. The dragon's lair was deep within the forest, hidden among the gnarled roots of an ancient oak. Smoke curled from the opening, a sure sign that the beast was at home. Reginald, gripping his sword tightly, dismounted and tied his horse to a nearby tree. Then, taking a deep breath, he crept closer to the lair. The dragon inside sensed danger and roared. Flames shooting from his nostrils, Reginald was ready. With a battle cry, he charged into the lair. The dragon lunged, its claws extended, but Reginald was too quick. He dodged the attack and plunged his sword into the dragon's flank. The beast roared in pain and surprise. It swiped at Reginald with its tail. But he leapt aside and struck again, and again, and again. The dragon, wounded and exhausted, finally collapsed. And so it was that Sir Reginald the Brave slew the terrible beast, and the kingdom was safe once more. The woman stared at the man, her mouth agape. And then the man continued, oblivious to the woman's astonishment. Reginald returned to the castle, where he was greeted as a hero. He had proven himself to be brave, loyal and true, and the people rejoiced. He closed the book with a snap, the woman still staring at him. "That," he said proudly, "is how a real adventure goes." A long silence stretched between them. The woman blinked and slowly began to speak. "So you said that because I was sitting here quietly by the fire not making any noise." "Right." The man nodded, his eyes twinkling. "Exactly. You see, some nights the adventures in these stories come alive. And when that happens, I need to make sure they don't disturb anyone. That's why I always read them with my eyes closed. But since you were here, and I didn't want to startle you, I kept my eyes open. And I must say it worked rather well, didn't it?" The woman couldn't help but smile. "It did. Thank you for the story, kind sir, and thank you for your hospitality. I feel much better now." She stood up, shook the blanket out, folded it neatly and handed it back to the man. "It's getting late," she said, "and I should be on my way. My horse may be gone, but I can walk back in this weather. Thank you again for everything." And with that, she opened the door and stepped out into the night. The man watched her go, a strange feeling in his chest. He returned to his chair and picked up his book, but the words swam before his eyes. He couldn't read. For the first time in his life, he longed for an adventure, a real adventure with a fierce dragon to slay or a maiden to rescue. But all he had was a book of fairy tales and a quiet cottage. He sighed and closed his eyes, willing the night to be over, but sleep wouldn't come. All he could think about was the woman with the beautiful eyes who had sat by his fire and listened to his stories. And as the first rays of sunlight peeked through the window, he knew that his life would never be the same again.